Donald Trump sworn in as 47th President of the United States during the 60th presidential inauguration at U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. It was Trump's historic first day in office, where he took key actions including rescinding 78 Biden-era orders, withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, freezing federal hiring, mandating in-person work for government employees, and ending the weaponization of federal agencies. He has also implemented a regulatory freeze as previously announced in his speech, which prevents bureaucrats from issuing new regulations until the government and administration are fully under control. Trump's whirlwind start signals an aggressive agenda for his second term. Joining us on the telecast is Hugh Dugan, American academic and diplomat, joining us on the telecast. Hugh, welcome to the NewsX, and for joining us on the telecast, thank you to you. When it comes to Trump's coming back to power, do you think will there be an immediate action taken on immigrants, and will he be reviving his build the wall and remain in Mexico policies?
The president identified throughout the campaign, and for years, in fact, the dangers of open borders. We've seen the results of this to our national security, with millions of people coming in, of many of whom we have no prior knowledge as to their intent or their purpose here. But we do know that if they are here illegally, they are in fact breaking our law. So we're looking forward to reestablishing our borders, maintaining order on the southern border, asking our colleagues in Mexico to enforce their rules, to oblige us with trying to stop and stem the flow of illegal migration up through our southern border. And other measures that the president has identified, I have no doubt he will pursue on behalf of the safety and security of the American people, and to allow for an orderly migration process, which has always been our goal throughout our history.
All right. And how do you think Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, EU, and China are going to impact U.S. economy and the world?
Our country ran on tariffs as our principal source of revenue before we had an income tax in the early 20th century. I believe the use of tariffs now could be effective economically, but in the immediate sense, very effective politically. It sends a message to our trading partners and to our industrial base in America as to the direction this administration intends to go. It intends to promote free and fair trade on a balanced level. And if tariffs are the measure that is needed to get this point across to some of the more aggressive trade partners out there who seek advantage over us or continued advantage, then the talk of tariffs is a very powerful thing in and of itself. It could, in fact, in the first stages, lead to some self-correction by some of these aggressive trade practices overseas, not to tempt us any further and not to tempt the president's patience with them, and perhaps actually implement hard tariffs that would hit them hard quickly. So there's a political rhetoric involved, and there's an actual result in consequential rhetoric that might in fact take place if tariffs are raised. We'll see effects to our economy. In the longer term, I believe there would be positive effects, not just for our economy, but for the stability of the global economy. So much trade that is undertaken around the world is not always as transparently produced as we'd like to think. There are often labor practices in other countries that suffer for the sake of an exporter to get advantage over their competitors abroad, for instance. There might be the plundering of resources around the world in ways that seek advantage over their competitors abroad who practice a different form of responsible resource management, etc. So the word tariff is a shot across the bow of the international economy, that the most important trading partner for many countries, or one of its most important trading partners, the United States, is paying much more attention to the balancing out of economic influence around the world through trade practices by talking tariffs and perhaps by implementing them as necessary.
Trump has spoken about declassifying documents related to the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and previous efforts in this direction have remained futile. And will this order ever see the light of day, and will it end all the conspiracy theories?
Well, whatever information exists in confidential hands regarding the assassination of President Kennedy has been reviewed many times and should have been revealed to the public by now under the original mandate and the original deadlines for making such records public. So I believe it is overdue. Obviously, national security interests are always important as a consideration. There may have been subsequent events that kept this information from being released. I think at this time, we see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the administration, and he's long been talking about the need for accountability and public transparency as to what happened to his uncle, which was a tragedy, and I recall that myself. Most anybody alive at that time, still alive, will remember where they were when they heard the tragic news of the killing of President Kennedy. So I expect this President Trump, in his efforts to afford more transparency and accountability to the American people of what the government does and is more or less willing to promote the release of such information if it doesn't damage the national interest in any way that could prove damaging to our national security, which I doubt it would. And I expect with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in his administration, he's probably being requested to do so on that basis as well. So time will tell. I think our public is prepared to be brave enough to hear the circumstances and whatever ultimate findings are available. We are a democracy that depends upon the free flow of information. We respect the government's need to maintain confidentiality, to protect methods and sources and our national security. But I expect most public would believe that it is appropriate now to understand more fully that chapter in American history, put it in context, learn from that, hope it never happens again, and then move forward.
And when it comes to TikTok, how will Trump's decision to postpone the ban on TikTok impact Americans and China?
This past week has seen a lot of activity in the Gaza region with the release of hostages. And a lot of people have said, who gets credit for that, Trump or Biden? Well, the same week saw this amazing story about TikTok, whether or not it should remain a captive as well or free to be used all over the world. It looks like it's going to be taken down, but President Trump, I believe, is going to get credit for trying to maintain its openness and as an access to the American public for their needs. But he's not foolish. He understands fully the national security risks involved under the current ownership structure of TikTok. This is a bipartisan understanding and an appreciation, I think, across wide reaches of American culture that we do not wish to have our information compromised in the hands of adversaries of any sort, and that this new, very exotic social media resource tool can be very useful and it can also prove very threatening. So I believe the public will be sober about whatever happens in the end. In the meantime, I believe President Trump gets credit for not trying to take something down so quickly that will so disrupt many people's routines at this time. It may be that just a few days are necessary. It may be that no time will be afforded because the Supreme Court indeed has ruled. I'm eager to see President Trump's ingenuity at work again immediately. He never fails to surprise. I often don't see the solutions coming that he ultimately provides to us on many issues. So this too, I believe, will prove his leadership ability in hearing the people, understanding their needs, but also taking strong action for what's right for our national security and for the future of our country.
How feasible will it be for Trump to gain control of Greenland and Panama Canal? And what is his logic behind such action?
Well, President Trump has often been depicted by his critics because they take him literally, but not seriously. And his supporters are criticized for taking him seriously, but not literally. And so when he says we will take the Panama Canal, that's a very strong soundbite. It gets your attention. It raises a bigger issue. It's not something I would say we should take literally, certainly not up front, but we should take it seriously that it raises a major issue about access through the canal for American shipping and defense purposes, and this access being impeded now by Chinese interference and ownership over the ports and other arrangements that have since taken place over the last 40, 50 years upon the return of the canal to Panama by the United States Carter administration. So I expect some very serious geopolitical discussion to be emerging because they sense that this is a tender topic. Trump has made it so by speaking seriously, taking force, taking the canal by force, I think is reading too literally into what he's saying. I think that the question of Greenland as well is an interesting proposition. It's not totally original with this administration. It's been looked at over several decades in eras in American history. We do have a U.S. military foothold in Greenland already. There is a strong affinity between the people of Greenland and the United States, and a very strong willingness of that country to be within the Western Hemisphere security establishment and to do nothing to compromise or jeopardize their security in the world stage. They appreciate very much the crossroads type of geography that they present between adversaries, China, Russia, and the United States. So again, let's take this very seriously. And the fact that we may hear things that sound bombastic or forward or unexpected or undiplomatic should not control our dialogue. The topic at hand is a serious issue. We're looking to maintain security throughout this hemisphere around the world and not to have that any unnecessary undue interference through the Panama Canal and to afford the United States a broader range of security opportunities through further deeper cooperation with our neighbors in Greenland.
And my last question to you is that will Trump be able to end the Ukraine-Russia conflict now that he is in power?
The Ukraine crisis is no one person's problem to resolve. As we see in geopolitics, there are many actors and many more we don't see behind the scenes. There are a lot of poker games at work when you get into a complicated situation such as the Ukraine-Russia war right now. This president has signaled his interest in bringing his best efforts to bear to the table. He spoke forcefully as a candidate, as a president-elect. He also created a moment for the world to realize that there was change coming, a strong inflection point specifically related to Ukraine and Russia, to resolve that situation, to stop the killing, to stop the human carnage. It has to be the first humanitarian impulse. And that's really where President Trump has come from to start with, is to stop the killing, to create some form of stability in the region. I think he's brought his best thinking, his best efforts forward throughout the campaign. Now it's a matter of implementation, engaging all the parties, all the relevant actors, identifying some that may not be so obvious to us, and working quickly to at least stem the inhumanity of the ongoing killing there, to put things into perspective, to offer somewhat of a moment for all sides to catch their breath, realize this isn't the path to continue, and to offer some solutions as quickly as possible. and offer to develop even more solutions past that toward the earliest possible resolution of the crisis. I'm confident that this is going to be one of the topics on his desk on day one. He said it would be. There are many on that desk. This one is looking for resolve as quickly as possible.
All right, Hugh, thank you so much for joining us on the telecast and sharing your insights on Trump's coming back to power.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.